What if a billionaire pretended to be sick, just to test his own family? Would they care for him, or count down to his death? This is the shocking story of Mr. Edward Miles and how one simple test revealed who truly loved him. My dear friends, please support me by clicking the subscribe button. Your support means so much to me. Let's grow this family together. Thank you so much. Story begins. A man named Mr. Edward Miles. Everyone knew him as the richest man in the East. People respected him, praised him, and even feared him. They called him Billionaire Miles. But behind all the money, power, and big houses, Edward was a very lonely man. His house was always full of people, his children, relatives, and workers. The compound looked busy. Cars came in and out. Laughter filled the air sometimes. But Edward knew the truth deep inside: nobody truly loved him. They only loved his money. He sat every morning by the big window in his upstairs room, looking outside with a cup of hot tea in his hand. He had everything money could buy: the finest clothes, best doctors, latest phones, and cars. But he had no peace. He remembered how his late wife, Deborah, used to sit beside him and pray. Since she died 10 years ago, nothing had been the same. His children, Victor and Amanda, were grown now. Victor was a businessman who only came home when he needed money. Amanda was a socialite who traveled from one country to another, always posting her father's mansion on Instagram, calling it "my future inheritance." Edward had other people living in the house: nieces, nephews, cousins, and their children. He paid everyone's bills, but not one of them came to sit with him without asking for something. Not one. One rainy evening, Edward stood by the staircase and heard something that changed everything. He wasn't trying to spy. He just wanted to take a walk around the house. But he stopped when he heard his son Victor talking to Amanda and one of the cousins in the sitting room. "The old man is wasting time," Victor said coldly. "Yes, now," Amanda added. "He should just rest and go. I'm tired of waiting." "I checked his papers," their cousin said. "That big land worth billions. Can't we do something to speed this up?" Amanda asked. Edward's heart shook. He leaned against the wall for balance. The people he loved most were waiting for him to die. He quietly climbed back up the stairs, entered his room, and locked the door. For hours, he said nothing. His loyal driver, Martin, knocked several times, but he didn't answer. That night, Edward didn't sleep. The next morning, he called Martin inside and sat him down. "Martin, you've been with me for 20 years, Edward began. "I want to do something, but it must remain between me and you." "Yes, sir," Martin said, sitting upright. "I want to pretend to be sick. I want to see what my family will do. Will they care? Will they support me? Or will they rejoice and divide my things before I close my eyes?" Martin's eyes opened wide. "Sir, that's dangerous." "Oh." Edward smiled. "It's more dangerous not to know the truth." He also called Dr. Benson, his personal doctor. He explained everything. "Help me act it well," he said. "Let them think I'm dying slowly." Dr. Benson was shocked. But after hearing what Edward heard the night before, he agreed. The news spread all over the house. "Daddy is sick. A serious sickness has hit him. He's lying in bed, unable to move well." Some people cried fake tears. Others started whispering and calculating. Edward lay quietly in bed, his eyes half open, pretending to be weak. Dr. Benson even brought a drip and machines to make it look real. Martin stood at the door like a guard dog. Amanda rushed in with her loud voice. "Oh no, Daddy, what happened to you?" She knelt beside the bed, but Edward noticed how her eyes kept looking around at the bedside table, his gold wristwatch, and the key to his private safe. Victor came later in the evening. He didn't even sit beside the bed. He stood near the door and asked, "What did the doctor say? Is it serious? Can he still sign documents?" Edward's heart broke again. Not one of them asked him, "Daddy, are you okay?" Not one held his hand in love. They only saw him as a dying wallet. When everyone had gone to sleep, Edward sat up and whispered to Martin, "Let's see how far this will go. The game has just begun." The next morning, the mansion inn was quiet and tense. Everyone walked on their toes. The news had spread quickly: Mr. Edward Miles is very sick. Dr. Benson had played his part well. He arrived early with a serious face, carrying a medical bag and dressed in white. He even brought a small oxygen tank and a monitor with blinking lights. He walked into Edward's room and told the family outside. "His condition is bad. He's weak. He needs complete rest. Nobody should stress him. Just pray. Immediately, the mood in the house changed. Victor sat in the living room, staring at the ceiling. Amanda called 3 of her friends, whispering on the phone. Yes, it's serious this time. I think we're finally there. My own share is loading. Some relatives started arriving from different towns, all pretending to be concerned. But their eyes told the real story. They weren't there to care. They were there to see if the old man would die soon. Inside the room, Edward lay on the big bed, his body still, his eyes closed. He listened carefully. His mind worked fast. Every visitor, every word, every whisper, he heard it all. Only Martin, his loyal driver, and Dr. Benson knew the truth. One cousin, Samuel, walked into the room with a big Bible and a fake pastor. "We came to pray for Daddy," he said, kneeling beside the bed. The so-called pastor raised his voice and began shouting, "Every power of death, we command you. Loose him now." Edward wanted to laugh, but he stayed still. After the prayer, the fake pastor followed Samuel outside and whispered, "You'll need to bring money for more powerful prayers. This one needs serious fasting." Meanwhile, Victor had already called a lawyer friend. "Can you help me check something?" Victor said, "I want to confirm who owns Dad's property in Port Harcourt. If we can start the process early, it'll save time." Amanda wasn't left behind. She went straight to the garage, walked around her father's favorite car, a black Mercedes G-Wagon, and told one of the workers, "When the old man goes, this one is mine. We spray it pink." Edward heard about it later from Martin and shook his head. He remembered when he bought that car. Amanda didn't even say thank you. Back in the room, Edward pretended to cough and breathe slowly. Dr. Benson stood beside him, giving updates to the family. "We're managing him. He's not talking much. He's very weak." One of Amanda's friends came to visit and gave her a white bottle. "What's this?" Amanda asked. "Sleeping drops," the friend said quietly. "Just in case. You want to help nature a little." Amanda looked at the bottle for a long time. Outside, in the garden, Edward's nephew James sat alone, holding a Bible and a plate of food. He was a university graduate who hadn't found a job yet. Everyone in the house treated him like a nobody. He stayed in the boys' quarters. But since Edward got sick, James had come every morning to pray, feed him, and clean his room. Nobody told him to. Nobody paid him. He just cared. While everyone else was busy making plans, James walked into Edward's room quietly. He sat on a stool, held his uncle's hand gently, and whispered, "Uncle, I don't know what is going on, but I want you to know that I love you. I'm praying for you. Please don't give up." Edward squeezed his hand weakly. That moment touched his soul more than anything else in years. The lawyer arrived. Not the one Victor called Edward's real lawyer, Mr. Lawson. He had received a secret message from Edward. In the quiet of the study room, Edward sat up and spoke to him and Martin. "Write a new will. I want to change everything." Lawson looked surprised. "Are you sure, sir?" Edward nodded. "Yes. My eyes have opened. My true family.is not who I thought." Mr. Edward Miles remained sick. The mansion became even more chaotic, but not in the way you would expect during a health crisis. Instead of gathering to support one another or spend time with their dying father, the family members grew more selfish and more wicked. Every corner of the house became a place for secret meetings. The kitchen, the veranda, the car garage all turned into war zones where relatives discussed how to divide Edward's wealth. His son, Victor, grew more restless. He couldn't wait anymore. "I've waited for years," he told his lawyer friend on the phone. "Now that he can't talk well or even walk, I should take over. Let's start with the Lagos office. Draft a paper for ownership transfer. He'll sign." Victor marched into Edward's room later that day, holding a document. He smiled sweetly and leaned close to his father's ear. "Dad, it's just some small business papers. You don't have to read it, just sign here." Edward looked weak. He raised his hand, acting confused. Victor took the pen and placed it in his hand. Before Edward could do anything, Martin stepped forward. "Sir, the doctor said he's too weak to sign anything," Martin said sharply. Victor frowned. "I'm his son. I know what's best." But Martin didn't move. He stood like a wall between Victor and the old man. Victor left angrily. "We'll see," he muttered under his breath. In another part of the mansion, Amanda was preparing for her birthday party while her father lay on his deathbed. She told her friends, "Whether he lives or not, I need to celebrate. After all, life must go on." They decorated the back garden with golden balloons, pink flowers, and a big stage. Amanda danced and laughed while wearing a gold dress, shouting, "I'm the next queen of this mansion." Edward heard the music from his room and closed his eyes in pain. It felt like his heart was tearing apart. The same daughter he once carried in his arms now danced and celebrated while waiting for him to die. One of the cousins, Clinton, started stealing from Edward's personal drawer. He took gold cufflinks, watches, and even bundles of cash hidden behind books. "He won't need these where he's going," Clinton said, laughing to himself. Another relative, Sophia, brought a pastor to the house, but it wasn't for prayer. The pastor was known for seeing visions that helped people get properties fast. "Lay hands on the land documents," she told the pastor. "Just say it belongs to me already. We need spiritual backup." Edward's staff started talking too. The gardener said, "These people don't even pity their father. If money was a person, they'd marry it." But while the storm of greed continued, James, the humble nephew, remained by Edward's side. Every morning, he came in with a towel and a bowl of warm water. He cleaned Edward's face, changed his bedsheets, and read Bible verses aloud. "Uncle, Psalm says, 'The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Don't worry, you will be fine.'" Sometimes, James brought porridge or pap from the kitchen and fed Edward with a spoon. He talked to him gently, told jokes, and even played soft music to keep the room calm. James didn't know the sickness was fake. He just truly loved his uncle. One afternoon, Edward opened his eyes and whispered. James ran to his side. "Yes, uncle, I'm here." Edward smiled weakly. "Thank you." That single thank you meant more to James than all the money in the world. Edward asked Martin to bring him the hidden camera recordings from around the house. Yes, he had cameras not just in the sitting room but also in the garage, hallways, and dining area. He watched Amanda dancing and popping champagne. He saw Victor arguing with a lawyer, trying to forge documents. He saw cousins opening his drawers, counting his money, and hiding gold in their pockets. His eyes watered, but he didn't cry, not anymore. He had seen enough. The time to act was coming close. Only one person James showed pure, honest love. Edward said to Martin, "This boy, he has the heart of my late wife." That night, he called his lawyer, Mr. Lawson, again. "Finalize the will. Give James everything. I mean everything, the houses, the businesses, the lands. Let the others face the results of their own actions." Lawson was shocked. Even his own children. Edward didn't blink. They chose property over people. Let them enjoy their choice. By the end of the second week, the situation in the mansion had grown ugly. What started as secret whispers and quiet plans had now turned into open battles. Mr. Edward Miles, still lying quietly in bed and pretending to be sick, had seen and heard enough to break the heart of any man. From his hidden cameras, he had watched how greed, lies, and evil desires took over his family. One early morning, shouting came from the sitting room. "You're not the only child." Amanda screamed at Victor. "And you're not the only one who wants the house." Victor replied. Aunties, uncles, cousins, everyone started taking sides. The compound that once smelled of peace and flowers now stank of anger and division. Amanda had called a building engineer to measure the mansion, claiming she wanted to redesign it and make the sitting room larger. Victor had ordered new furniture and called a lawyer to start preparing property transfer papers for the Port Harcourt house. Even Edward's burial plan was being discussed while he was still breathing. "We'll make it simple," Amanda said. "Yes," someone added. "Let's just bury him quietly and use the money for something better." Amanda entered the kitchen with a bottle of white powder and gave it to her cousin, Sophia. "What's this?" Sophia asked. Amanda whispered, "It's just a little something to speed things up. A pinch in his tea, and he'll sleep forever. He's already halfway gone." Sophia looked scared. "But what if we're caught?" Amanda rolled her eyes. "Caught? The doctor already said he's dying. Who will know?" Meanwhile, James was in Edward's room, feeding him warm soup and wiping his mouth. Edward, hearing all of Amanda's plan later through Martin, closed his eyes in pain. "My daughter wants to poison me." Martin nodded. "Sir, she's serious. We have to do something." Edward shook his head. "Not yet. Let them show their full hearts." A woman named Mrs. Helen came to visit Edward. She was his late wife's best friend and had once helped raise Amanda and Victor when they were small. She walked into the room and gasped when she saw Edward lying down. "Oh my God, Edward, What happened? He smiled weakly. I'm still breathing, Helen. She held his hand and sat down. I came to check on you. No one told me you were this bad. Amanda only said you were resting. She stayed for hours, telling stories about Deborah, Edward's late wife. Edward smiled. You're the first visitor that didn't come for land or money. Mrs. Helen sighed. I'm so sorry. I wish Deborah were alive to see this. James, the unexpected son. Meanwhile, James kept shining like a light in the middle of darkness. He helped Edward sit up every day, changed his bedsheets, swept the room, and sang old gospel songs. He even cut Edward's nails and combed his hair. He didn't care about who owned what or who would get what after death. He didn't even know there was a will. He only knew his uncle was sick, and that meant he had to love and serve him. After James left the room to sleep in the boys' quarters, Edward whispered to Martin. He is the son I prayed for but never had. That night, Edward asked Mr. Lawson, his lawyer, to return. Prepare the new will, sign it, stamp it, and lock it. Give James 90% of everything, the companies, the houses, the cars, even my shares. The rest, I don't care what happens to it. Lawson asked one more time, Sir, are you sure? Edward looked straight into his eyes. They buried me before I died. They celebrated my funeral with drinks and laughter. But one boy, one poor boy, stayed beside me. Amanda discovered that someone had reported her to Edward's lawyer. She accused Victor of trying to block her from getting the mansion. You want to cheat me? She screamed. After I suffered to take care of Daddy. Victor laughed bitterly. Take care of who? You were busy taking selfies while he was dying. Their fight turned physical. Chairs flew, glasses broke, and security rushed in. Edward, watching everything live from his screen, turned to Martin. Now it is time. I have watched this house burn with the fire of greed while I still breathe. I have listened to laughter during what was supposed to be my final moments. I have seen fake tears and real evil. But in the middle of it all, a candle of kindness kept burning. His name is James. Edward folded the letter and handed it to lawyer Lawson, who had come to collect the final copy of the new will. Keep this letter with the will. Read it on the day I say so. And not before. Lawson nodded with a serious face. It will be done, sir. He had known Edward for over years. Never had he seen the billionaire so emotional. But this wasn't about money anymore. It was about betrayal, pain, and justice. Edward's new will was clear. 90% of his total wealth, including companies, mansions, cars, shares, and land, would go to James. 5% would be donated to a foundation for widows and orphans. The remaining 5% would be shared among loyal staff, especially Martin and Dr. Benson. Victor and Amanda were not mentioned. Not a dime, not even a car key. Let them learn that love cannot be bought with blood. Edward Said. Lawson folded the papers and placed them in a sealed envelope. A copy was stored in the bank's legal office for protection. Meanwhile, back in the mansion, the mood had changed again. Amanda, furious after her fight with Victor, walked around the compound with her lawyer, shouting. I want everything. He's my father. Nobody else has a right. Victor had gone silent and cold. He stayed in his room, drinking whiskey and making phone calls to his connections. Cousins packed items into their bags: perfumes, wine bottles, a painting from Edward's office, thinking no one would notice. Even the housemaid took Edward's expensive shoes and hid them under her bed. The house, once full of light and elegance, now felt like a funeral home. Not because someone died, but because greed had killed love. While everyone else fought and stole, James continued his quiet service. He brought fresh flowers to Edward's room. He played gospel songs in the background. He even wrote a small poem and read it aloud beside his uncle's bed. Even when the body fails, a kind heart will still prevail. Love is not what riches buy, but how we care before we die. Edward listened with his eyes closed. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He whispered to Martin later, that boy is Deborah's son in spirit. Edward wasn't ready to rise and expose everything just yet. He wanted to wait for one more thing: his birthday. His 7th year's birthday was only 4 days away. That would be the perfect day. Everyone would be in the house. There would be food, cameras, and witnesses. That was when the truth would hit the ground like thunder. He gave clear instructions to Martin and Lawson. Prepare the main sitting room. Invite everyone. Tell them it's a birthday and a will reading. Martin looked confused. Sir, but they think you are dying. Edward smiled. Let them think so. Until the day I rise. Edward also had a private meeting with Dr. Benson. "Thank you for helping me keep this secret, Benson," he said. "But now, watch your back." Amanda asked for a sleeping drug. "They may try to use you." Dr. Benson nodded nervously. "I understand, sir. I've already warned my assistant not to let anyone near your medication." "Good, Edward Said. After this, we see who they truly are." The night before Edward's birthday, the house was quiet, too quiet. Amanda had called a decorator to bring gold and white balloons. Victor had invited a few business partners. They all thought they were gathering to say goodbye to their father and to find out who would take over the empire. No one suspected what Edward had planned. He sat in his chair by the window, fully dressed in a white agbada, his mind sharp. "Tomorrow," he said to Martin, "they will meet the man they buried alive." It was Mr. Edward Miles' 70 years birthday, but no one in the family saw it as a celebration. In their minds, it was more like a final goodbye. A chance to honor the dying man and secretly claim their inheritance. The mansion was decorated with gold and white balloons, fresh flowers lined the staircase, and music played softly in the background. Amanda wore a long silver gown with heels that clicked loudly on the marble floors. Victor wore a black suit and dark glasses, pretending to be emotional. Cousins, nieces, nephews, and fake family friends filled the mansion, whispering and laughing behind their palms. "Today we will know who owns what. He can't even talk anymore, right? I heard they want to read the will immediately after the celebration. God bless the old man for dying rich." But what they didn't know was that the dying man was watching them live on camera, dressed in his full white agenda, sitting upright, and ready to shake their souls. In the grand sitting room, a long table was arranged. A microphone stood in the center. A cake with the words "Happy 70 years birthday, Daddy" stood untouched. Martin, Edward's driver, entered the room and cleared his throat. "Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the family and the legal team, I welcome you. The man of the house will be joining us shortly." Victor leaned close to Amanda and whispered, "He won't come out. He can barely sit up. They'll probably roll in his wheelchair." Amanda smiled wickedly. "That's if he makes it." But suddenly, all heads turned. The double doors to the sitting room swung open. And there stood Mr. Edward Miles, tall, healthy, and very much alive. Wearing spotless white clothes and brown leather shoes, he walked confidently into the room, holding a microphone. You could hear a pin drop. Amanda gasped. Victor's mouth hung open. Cousins nearly choked on their drinks. Some people stood, unsure whether to clap or cry. Edward looked around the room with calm, piercing eyes. Then he spoke, his voice strong and clear. "Good afternoon, my beloved family and guest. You all look so surprised to see me standing. Why? Because I was supposed to be dead today." Still, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet creak of the ceiling fan. "For the past few weeks, I have pretended to be sick. Very sick. I wanted to see something. I wanted to see your hearts." He looked straight at Amanda. "I watched you dance and drink. While you thought I was dying." He turned to Victor. "You brought lawyers and started selling my properties, even tried to force me to sign documents." Gasps filled the room. "I saw cousins steal from my drawers. I heard you plan my funeral. You gave my cars away. You even discussed poisoning me." Amanda started to cry. Victor looked down at the floor. "You buried me before I stopped breathing. You celebrated my death while I still walked among you." He paused and held up the sealed envelope. "But I also saw something else. I saw light in the middle of this darkness. I saw someone who sat with me, fed me, cleaned me, and prayed for me. A young man with no money, but a rich heart." He turned to James. "Come forward, my son." James stood confused, embarrassed, humble. "Everyone, meet the new heir of the Miles Empire." Lawyer Lawson stepped forward and opened the envelope. According to the wishes of Mr. Edward Miles, the entire estate, including all businesses, lands, cars, and savings, is now under the control of Mr. James Miles, his nephew. Amanda screamed, "No." Victor stood up and shouted, "This is madness." A cousin fell back into his chair, gasping, "He gave it to that boy." Some visitors quietly picked their bags and left. But Edward didn't flinch. "You all failed the test. You showed me your true hearts. James, who had nothing to gain, gave me love. You, who had everything, gave me poison. You're still my children, but you're no longer part of my future. I will not disown you. But you will earn every kobo if you want anything from me again." He handed James a key and a letter. "This house is yours now. Use it to build a better name than I did. James was speechless. I didn't do anything special, he whispered. Edward placed a hand on his shoulder. That's why you deserve everything. As the lawyer, Mr. Lawson, read the final words of the will, the mansion shook not from thunder or rain, but from the weight of truth. James had just inherited everything. The companies, the real estate, the lands in Abuja, the hotels in Port Harcourt, and the mansion they all sat in. The room exploded. You can't be serious, Amanda shouted, standing up. Daddy, you're joking, right? Tell them you're joking. Edward turned to her calmly. I'm not joking, Amanda. You failed the test. You left me for dead and tried to take what wasn't yours. Amanda dropped to her knees, crying. But I'm your daughter. Your only daughter. You buried your father while he was alive. You even planned to poison me. What kind of daughter does that? Victor stood quietly, breathing heavily. I made mistakes, Dad, but this is too much. That boy is not even blood like us. Edward pointed at James. He is more my son than you have ever been. He stood beside me when you walked away. He showed me love without expecting anything. That's what matters to me now. Cousins, aunties, and hangers-on began to leave, realizing there was nothing for them. Even Amanda's lawyer quietly picked up his file and vanished through the side door. Later that day, Amanda locked herself in her room and refused to eat. She wept, not just because of the money but because she finally realized how far she had fallen. Victor packed his bags that same evening and left the compound without a word. He didn't say goodbye, not even to Amanda. In his heart, he knew he had failed his father, and himself. The cousins were silent. They no longer had access to Edward's estate. The free school fees, the allowances, the weekend trips all gone. Gone were the loud arguments, the fake smiles, and the empty visitors. The house felt peaceful. It felt like a home. Edward watched him from the balcony with a peaceful smile. The boy has a good heart, he said to Martin. Yes, sir, Martin replied. Edward handed over control of his main company Miles Group. Edward, he lived longer than any doctor expected. Surrounded by peace, joy, and real love. He had lost fake family. But in return, he found a real son. And that is the story of Mr. Edward Miles, the billionaire who pretended to be sick to test the hearts of his own family. In the end, it wasn't the loudest, richest, or most popular person that earned his inheritance. It was the quiet, humble one, the one who loved without expecting anything in return. This story reminds us of something deep. Sometimes, blood does not make you family. Love, loyalty, and truth, these are the things that matter most. So before you run after wealth, before you chase after what others have, ask yourself. What's in your heart? Are you the Victor, the Amanda, or the James? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story and the message it carries, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Comment below, tell us, what would you do if you were in Mr. Edward's shoes? New stories drop every week, inspiring, emotional, and life-changing. Remember, in the end, kindness wins. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story. I love you all. Bye.